Hello, Year 3 and Year 4. I'm going to be talking more about the history of Paddington. Today we're going on a slightly different direction. Instead of going through the chronological history of Paddington that we have been doing, chronological means in time order, we're going to look at how the housing in Paddington has changed. So we're going to look at some of the original houses and move our way through, because the style of housing in Paddington is quite unique. Now, if we look at these places, these are some of the original buildings that the people built when there was still a lot of land available in Paddington. Here's Juniper. It's a painting of Juniper Hall. This is an old photo of the terraces at Cooper Street. And I believe it's now an old person's home or an aged care facility. Okay, so the first settlers in Paddington, as we know, were millers and distillers. And as Glenmore Road opened up because of the distillery, that made more land available for people to move out of the city and onto larger areas of land. It was predominantly the colonial officials who built large estates on grants of land from the government. These estates were freestanding large houses, such as Juniper Hall, and they had gardens and orchards and had fenced paddocks for holding livestock. You can see this area in front of the terraces here has been farmed. Okay. Now, from 1840 to 1850, so remember that the building of Victoria Barracks started around 1841 and finished around 1848. And that started to change the way that the Paddington area was developing in terms of its housing. So the first subdivision of Paddington was directly across the road from Victoria Barracks. It was the Australian Subscription Library who had been granted some land, and they had been in the Paddington area. And as the barracks were being built, the land around the barracks was becoming more and more expensive to buy. And so they decided to profit from their land grant, and they subdivided their land and sold it. So this was right opposite Victoria Barracks on Oxford Street. They built a road called Gibbs Street, and some of the first cottages in Paddington, this cottage here, this cottage here, this is where those first cottages were built. This row of terraces here in Underwood Street were built in 1842, and some of the earliest simple terraces. They are relatively simple. They're often made with sandstone because that was readily available and it was strong. And you can see that they've been built right up to the footpath. Okay, so this one has been set back a little bit. It's got a porch at the front. This one too has been built right up onto the footpath. So as you opened the door, you walked straight into the front room. There wasn't a front gate. Now, each of these houses, they all followed a very similar pattern. Each house had a sitting room or a parlour and a dining room. So 2 rooms at the front. And up in the terraces here, there were 2 attic bedrooms upstairs. The cottages had the bedroom downstairs. You can see they're only single story. And the terraces had 2 bedrooms upstairs, one facing the street and the other on the other side of the building. The kitchen and the toilet were in the backyard, mainly because of things like cooking fumes and the smells. So they were more open air, often just a lean-to against the back of the house. Now, this is the next decade, 1850 to 1860. And the 1850s were the end of the gold rush. And so many prospectors who had been out in rural areas of Australia looking for gold, prospecting for gold, returned to Sydney when the gold rush had finished. And they needed jobs and they needed homes. So this group of terraces here is right down on the bottom of Glenmore Road near Edgecliff. And you can see that they're very simple and very small. Again, they've been built right up onto the footpath. So because so many people had come from the goldfields, this led to further subdivision of properties and redevelopment into smaller, simpler cottages and terraces. Now, this group of terraces here on Glenmore Road were built for workmen. So they don't have the combined dining room. They don't have separated parlour and dining room. They've got one room that is at the front of the house, that is their combined parlour and bedroom. And then they also have a bedroom, single bedroom, and out the back was a lean-to kitchen. So lean-to just means that it was probably just a piece of timber or something that leaned up against the back of the house where they could shelter. Now, this group of terraces in Iris Street was built in 1856, and you can see that they still have front doors going straight onto the street, so there's no setback from the footpath. These were built, Iris Street is near Victoria Barracks. These terraces were built for the families of soldiers that lived in Victoria Barracks. They were much bigger than these ones. These ones were for single people, usually single men. These ones were for families, so they're much bigger because they needed to house a family. And again, they were built straight onto the street with the overhanging veranda, giving them some shelter from any rain that was coming down. And again, these ones had two rooms on the bottom floor, on the ground level floor, which were the parlour. The parlour is an entertaining area for visitors, about a bit like our lounge room today, or an open plan room. And behind that was a dining room where the family ate. Upstairs were two bedrooms, one at the front and one at the back. The kitchen again was still separate out the back of the house. Okay, now we're moving into 1860 and 1870, and we can start to see the housing change at this point. We start to get lots of this wrought iron balconies, and we get a lot more decorative features. So by 1860, Underwood had sold his land to John Begg, and he subdivided the land for the Paddington estate. This was a large piece of land, and developers such as Begg wanted to maximise their profits by building houses close together on small blocks. The buyers also wanted to demonstrate their wealth by making their houses ornate on the outside and the inside. So ornate means highly decorated. These houses in Windsor Street, which was part of the Paddington estate, have got their wrought iron balconies, and they've got wrought iron also decorating the veranda parts on the ceiling of the verandas. The front doors are set back from the street, so they've now got a small front garden, and that served to give them a little bit more privacy so that they weren't directly on the street, and also helped them to show off their house with a small garden at the front. Inside the houses were also ornate, and you can see this type of ceiling with these bits here are called cornices, and that was a highly decorated part of the house. Often they had decorated ceilings as well, and here you can see the traditional type of railing or balustrade on the stairs. Again, these houses, same plan as has been consistent through all of the Paddington developments. There was two rooms downstairs for the family to entertain and to eat, and two rooms upstairs, for one had the front bedroom and the other at the back bedroom. The bathroom and kitchen were still out in the yard. In 1870s and the 1880s, this is where most of the subdevelopment happened in Paddington. Often the land was sold several times. Firstly, they subdivided it into 18-metre street frontages, and then divided that again into halves to 9-metre frontages, and finally into the standard 4.5-metre frontage. Now, that is the standard one for a lot of Paddington, but there were still some differences, particularly corner blocks of terraces. This is still connected on this side of the house, but this side is at the end of a street, and so that was left as a bigger house, and that would have been more expensive to buy. These ones in Windsor Street have got wider frontages as well. So the wider frontages just enabled the developers to get a little bit more money from the people who they were selling them to. You can see compared to this one that this frontage of the house is probably about double the width of this one here. The ones that were on the edge of on the corner block also had extra light because they could put in more windows. This one has got a balcony out the side, and a balcony out the front, so they can let in more light and more air. Many of the Paddington Terrace houses look identical at first. However, there's some differences between the estates where they've been subdivided. So because these were originally estates, so the Paddington estate or the Olive Bank estate, so different developers were involved, and there are slight differences in the way that the houses are decorated. And this row of terraces in Cameron Street shows they're stepping down the road there. They've got a single roof line there with an ornate feature in the middle. This one is another group of terraces. You can see this is the main part, the centre building of the terraces, and it has got a larger frontage, being 3 stories. This one has got the dormer window at the top, and we'll look at the dormer windows again in a minute. Again, these houses you can see have got different styles of their design, but they're all set back now from the street with either a small garden or a small porch. The styles of windows and doors vary between the different estates. This isn't a very good picture, but you can see this one has got a different design to the way the windows and doors are decorated. This one has got less ornate, but still has that decorative effect. This one is using more decoration again. That's just the windows. And this one is even more decorated again with those twisted pillars going between the panes of the window. Now, some of these houses paint their decorations the same colour as the house. Others, like this one and this one, have used a contrasting paint colour to highlight the decorative effect. And the last one we're going to look at today is the dormer window, and I wasn't able to get many examples of this. This is from the original terraces in Underwood Street in 1842. So that's a very simple dormer window. The dormer window is in the roof where the bedrooms have been built, and the dormer window gives light and air into the roof part to have bedrooms up there. We did have another dormer window over in this picture, and you can see that that is a much more newer style than the one in the other picture. So as you're walking around Paddington, next time you go for a walk or next time you're out walking around Paddington, see if you can find some of those different features of the Paddington Terrace. They're very unique to Paddington. It was a style of building that was at the time when Paddington was developing. So we do find terraces in other parts of the city, like Glebe, and in other cities like Melbourne. However, Paddington has been very good at controlling development to make sure that those buildings are still looked after. I'm going to finish off there. So you will have a worksheet to do to consolidate that information. Okay,